So let's start with the most important part of the webinar, that is discussion with our esteemed speakers. Uh, I'm sure that this discussion will be informative and valuable. So let's start with the first speaker of the day, Mr. Sunayan Sanatani. Mr. Sunayan Sanatani, I would like to invite you to speak about various, that is the pressing need of the hour, about various upcoming IMO regulations which will be effective from 1st Jan 2024. Over to you, Mr. Sanatani.
Thank you, Ritesh. So we will briefly run through the regulations, okay, with regards to moorings, why the need for statutory certification, things to watch out for in the new regime, and what is to be done for older ships. Okay, as you all might be knowing, mooring as a requirement in SOLAS came about only in 2007. 1st January. Before that, mooring was not a part of SOLAS. It was totally outside the purview of any statutory requirement. But because of various issues, which we'll just briefly delve on a little later, this became a mandatory requirement from January 2007. Uh, Going forward, from 1st January 2024, we have some upcoming amendments, mainly pertaining to inspection of the existing mooring arrangements on board. Previously, mooring arrangement and inspection of equipment, inspection of mooring lines was not a part of SOLAS. Coming from with effect from 1st January 24, it will become a mandatory requirement. Now, some background information on why it is so. Design of ships have become more complicated, you could say more optimized. Okay, but it was felt that development of mooring systems have not adequately followed the development of ship designs. And the main critical part was, despite operational safety improvements on mooring operations, a high number of accidents still were taking place. So that is why what was decided is we will have to strengthen the existing regulation, which was very generic in nature. The original SOLAS requirement, which came about in January, now it is divided in two parts. Part one is on selection of appropriate fittings. Part two is on guidelines for inspection and maintenance of mooring equipment. Ships built before 2007 will have are likely to have some challenges on certain aspects, such as not having the minimum brake load and safe working load data of fittings. This may not be available in the ship's records. For vessels where the information is available, class will do the review and approve the documents. Where vessels do not have the documentation, it has been left to the ship owner to establish MBL-SLD based on the safe working load of mooring fittings. Now, maintaining compliance will basically boil down to the procedures, following the procedures, which is A, inspection of mooring equipment, identification and control of mooring lines, and to follow the manufacturer's criteria for replacement of mooring lines. Okay, what is the goal of the new regulation? Goal of the new regulation, like always, is to help us replace mooring lines before any imminent failure. It is assumed that such replacements will lead to a reduction in mooring incidents, which are still a very large number. And the second goal is to select mooring lines, in the replacement mooring lines in such a way that they are compatible with existing fittings. This briefly is the summary of the new regulations. Thank you.
Right, right. Very well said, Mr. Sunayan. I want to delve a little deeper into the upcoming regulations. A very fundamental question. You know, why there has been a historical lag between dry vessels and tanker vessels with respect to mooring safety, especially when they have almost no difference as far as vessel structure is concerned, or even port operations are concerned. For example, a very fast changing freeboard while in port. So why there has been a lag between the standards?
Very well asked question, Ritesh. As you said, the mooring system and its operation is almost identical for tankers and bulk carriers. There's almost no change. But tanker industry traditionally has been driven by the tanker bodies, chiefly the OCIMF. They understood quite some time ago, almost I think 10 years ago, that unless we put a little more control on mooring fittings, mooring equipment, we are likely to have more incidents. That is why they brought out their own guidelines, which were not part of statutory requirement. Having said that, the IMO realized that this has to be implemented in all ships, including dry cargo. And this is why the lag. The lag is because the bulk carrier industry, the dry cargo industry, it's much more fragmented. The industry bodies do not implement their own rules and they look up to the IMO for regulations. So once it has been brought in IMO, it has now become mandatory for bulk carriers. This is the main difference in the, this is the main reason for the lag between the tanker industry and the dry cargo industry.
Right. I think you have truly pinpointed the the pain point, I should say. Okay, a little more deeper. Let's talk about ships equipment. Many a times we see, for example, let's take mooring winch. Many a times we see there is a total disconnect between the mooring fittings on board and the winch brake holding capacity. More so for older ships built before 2007. Many times we see that either the mooring winch is heavily strengthened, or we see the mooring winch holding capacity is very low, So now mooring winch being a fixed equipment, it is not easy to renew or change just like any other, say, a mooring line. So there is nothing much for winches even in ISCS URA2, as far as winches holding capacity is concerned.
Yes, that is correct, Ritesh. And the main reason is, as we have dealt with earlier, mooring fittings as a SOLAS requirement came about only in January 2007. Before that, the design aspect of mooring as a part of ship structure, as a part of SOLAS was not there. So you will have equipment on board with incomplete information, and but you are required to comply with these new regulations. What has been done now is for older ships where this information is not available, the owner or the operator will declare his working values for the design load, for the safe working load. Based on that, class will approve your documents. You are not required to change or modify any of the existing fittings, especially for ships built before January 2007. That is the current arrangement.
Thank you. That was a very authoritative speech from information from you, and I'm sure that that must have cleared some roadblocks. All right, thank you, Mr. Sunayan, for such an informative
Thank you.
speech.